morning. Welcome to our online congregation. We're so glad that you've chosen to worship with us here. We'd love to have you here in the house, but if being online where you are is your best option, then we're so glad that you're joining us. Pastor Tim, I thank you so much for that really humbling introduction. I believe that God has put a fire in my belly to share with you today. And so a lot of times I feel kind of jovial, or I feel there's a lot of funny stories, but today is just really important to me, and I'm honored to be able to share it. Because I do believe that what God has for us has everything to do with more than Sunday. And I think that if we really want abundant life, if we want to overflow with all that God has for us in this life, it's going to involve more than Sunday. There's got to be more to life. There's got to be more. Don't you think generation after generation, humans just have kind of basic questions that we ask? Is there a creator? If there is a creator, can I know that creator? Can I trust that creator? Is my life significant? Is there anything about my life that will last beyond the days that I have on earth? If you've ever seen that meme, you've seen it where it talks about the important part isn't the first number or the last number that's on your tombstone, it's what you do with the dash in the middle. I think we get that. But I don't think even if we give all of our best intent and effort to making that dash the best that it can be, I think we're still missing something. Timothy Keller, he's a pastor, a teacher, a prolific author. He's an incredible disciple maker. He's been following Jesus and writing and teaching for probably more than 50 years, written so many books. And he just wrote an article I read yesterday about facing his own mortality. And not mortality in an abstract sense, but in the sense that he's carrying stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And he knows that his days are coming to a close. And he writes so beautifully about this tension of spending his entire life teaching all of these abstract thoughts of what it would be like for eternity. And now he's walking it day in and day out, and being authentic and vulnerable about what he's finding as he faces his own mortality. And he said something that I love. He speaks about his wife, Kathy, and he says, "Since my diagnosis, Kathy and I have come to see that the more we tried to make a heaven out of this world, the more we grounded our comfort and our security in it, and the less we were able to enjoy it. But to our surprise and our encouragement, Kathy and I have discovered that the less we attempt to make this world into a heaven, the more we are able to enjoy it." And I believe when he talks about enjoying it, he's talking about abundant life. And that abundant life, we believe, is found in knowing that this world could not ever be our heaven. It's temporal. And yes, God intended for us to have incredible lives. But we can only have incredibly abundant lives when we understand the temporal pales in comparison to the eternal. That's why Jesus talked so many times, the kingdom of heaven is this, the kingdom of heaven is this, the kingdom of heaven is this, because he knew that we were getting so distracted by the kingdom of the world around us. And so I wonder if we were living in our city here and Jesus came walking by and he was about to pass us and he stopped and he turned and he looked at each one of us and he said, "Nate, come, follow me." If he said it to each one of us, "Come, follow me," and we knew that it was an invitation to an upside-down life that had so much promise and potential, so much purpose beyond our imagination, if we really got that he was saying, "I will teach you to love your enemies. I will teach you to heal the sick, that you can learn and hear and know my voice, that I can anchor you through all of life's storms, and that when you follow me, you'll see the eternal right in the middle of the temporary, and that I will use you to help right wrongs and bring justice, to see the unseen, the unlovable people. I will teach you the beauty of laying down your life to find it." And if we knew that we could experience the greatest purpose, the greatest love we could ever know, then I think we might really lay it all down and go after him. And that's what More Than Sunday is. It's laying it all down and going after the radical rabbi that stopped to say, "Come, follow me." And so this morning, the message is entitled, "There's More to Life." Let's go find it together. If you would you stand with me? We're going to say together one more time our discipleship definition. To get it into our bones, get it into our heart, to get it into our lives. Would you say it with me, bold and loud? Discipleship is a lifelong journey of meeting God, discovering who we are in Christ, becoming more like Jesus, and leading others to do the same. Thank you so much. Please be seated. I practiced physical therapy for 21 years before I ever stepped into full-time ministry, and that's a lot of years in a field. It almost feels like an entire career. There's so much of that I studied and learned and put into practice. And one of the things that I found really interesting is that when we wanted to work on someone's gait or their movement, that we could look at the whole and we could look at the parts, but if you fix the parts, it doesn't automatically fix the whole. What do I mean by that? Gait or walking has a sequential pattern. You put your heel down, that's a heel strike. I swing my leg through, I heel strike again. I'm toeing off in the back, and I'm striking in the front. That's a lot to think about, isn't it? And it's not that we think about that when we're walking, because once we learn to walk, it becomes very natural. We're not processing all of those parts. So when we treat someone who's got a problem, hip pain, knee pain, we start to break down their gait and we see where's the problem. Then we work on it, then we put it all back together to see improvements in pain, in symptoms, and in movement. And when it comes to what we've been doing over the last 4 weeks together, is we've been breaking down the gate of the spiritual journey. We've been breaking it down into some words: meet, discover, become, and lead. But if we don't put it all back together before we end our time together, we will miss the beauty of how it works. Once we learn it, we move it on into not separate parts, but one cohesive whole. You heard Pastor Tim say this morning, he used the words life step 1, right? So there must be an implication that if there's a life step 1, there must be a life step 2, and there's probably some more steps. So when we talk about life steps here at Illuminate Church, what are we talking about? Life steps are the intentional steps that we take towards abundant life on our discipleship journey. In life step 1, it's going to happen today. There's still a few spots you can come. We take a deep check, a temperature check, kind of like an oil check on the tank of love, joy, and peace in our lives. We put the oil stick down in there, we pull it out, and we see, are we running low on love? Are we running low on our ability to forgive other people? Because that's how love is expressed. Are we running low on peace? Am I tossed about by every bit of circumstance that comes my way? Am I having abundant joy? Or when I pull that dipstick out, is it dry? Life step 1 is the place where we answer those questions together and we say, if there's more, then I want it. In life step 2, we go from rows like this down to groups and we face each other. And in that group context, we get to ask the questions about meet, discover, become, and lead that we can't ask when we're in here in an audience setting like this. So life step 2 allows you to take a deeper look as to where you are on the journey and where you can grow in meeting, discovering, becoming, and leading. So what happens after life step 2? We've got a map here I want to show you. We do believe there's more to life. There's abundant life available for you. And life step 1 and life step 2 take place, and then there's something we affectionately call a flywheel. And you see how meet, discover, become, and lead are all represented on that map, but they're not steps anymore. They're not step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. Once you go through life step 1 and 2, abundant life is found when meet, discover, become, and lead become an integral part of who you are. because life steps are more than Sunday. And if this series has convinced us of anything, I hope it is that 1 hour on a Sunday morning is not enough. In Hebrews 10, when we are encouraged, let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, with our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. When we do that, let us hold fast to the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And then let us consider how we can stir one another up to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another all the more as you see the day drawing near. So when we gather on a Sunday morning, or when we gather in a group, or we gather in a discipleship group, it's to consider how we can encourage each other, how we can spur each other on to continue to take life steps when we're away from each other. As our flywheel is intentionally not linear. And today I'm going to show you 3 vignettes that embody this principle. My hope that is in one of these, you will find yourself and begin to take your own life step journey. So the first place we're going to look is into the Bible, into the life of Saul. Now, if you were here a few weeks ago, Pastor Tim talked very briefly about Peter and Paul. And Paul is the Saul that we're talking about here. And don't let that confuse you. There's a season where we get to know him and he goes by Saul. And then there's a long season where he goes by Paul. And we'll talk more about why later. But what you need to know is that right here, we're going to jump into a depiction, a historical account of a disciple, a man named Stephen. And Stephen is passionately following Jesus. And he is preaching that Jesus is the Messiah. And he's out and causing a lot of trouble for the people that don't want that message to get out. And so Stephen, they wanted to shut him up. They wanted to shut him down. And they couldn't find a single real reason to get him in trouble. So they start to make some stuff up because that's pretty effective. And they get him in trouble. He is seized and he's sentenced to death for speaking that Jesus is the Messiah, Jesus is the way. And right in this scene, we're going to meet a crowd, and we're going to meet a couple people in Acts chapter 7. And the he here in verse 55 is Stephen. But he, full of the Holy Spirit, gazed into heaven and saw the glory of God, and Jesus standing at the right hand of God, and he said, "Behold, I see the heavens opened and the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God." Can you imagine? He's literally being stoned to death, falsely accused. And as he is dying, he has a vision of heaven opening up, and Jesus is standing almost in honor. He's receiving Stephen. He stands up from his rightful place on the throne to say, "Stephen, I know what is happening to you is wrong. You lock eyes with me. We're going to get through this together. You are mine, and you're coming to see me soon." But somebody else was there in the crowd that day. Somebody else that was looking on, somebody else standing, but not standing to honor Stephen, standing for a different reason. Acts chapter 8, verse 1 begins this way, "And Saul approved of his execution." Let these words linger for just a little bit longer. So you have Stephen standing here, his eyes fixed on Jesus, Jesus standing to honor Stephen, and a man named Saul looking on going, "Great job! We finally got that guy to shut up." This is the Saul that we're going to see have a radical meeting with God. But you've got to understand that his intent was zealous for the Jewish faith. He believed that what he believed about God was the right thing. The rest of Chapter 8, verse 1 says, "There arose on that day, the day of Stephen's death, a great persecution against the church in Jerusalem, and everybody scattered throughout all the regions of Judea and Samaria except the apostles. Devout men buried Stephen, made a great lamentation over him, but Saul." What was Saul doing? ravaging the church, entering house after house, dragging off men and women and committing them to prison. Do you see his commitment, his zeal to what he believed to be right? He had knowledge of the Jewish tradition. He was a trained leader in the Jewish religion. He was a Pharisee and probably had the entire first 5 books of the Bible memorized, along with the prophets that were teaching about the coming Messiah. But he believed that this man, Jesus, was a heretic, could not possibly be the Messiah that they were waiting for. So in Acts chapter 9, verse 1, we begin reading, "But Saul," it's always but Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues at Damascus. So if he found anyone belonging to the way, men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. So what has Saul done? He's gone to get official credibility to say, if I hear anybody teaching about Jesus,